How's the first day been, and what are some of the highlights that you've been discussing from Europe?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. I see myself on the camera, but you may not do. But we also had quite a full and exciting day. We had keynotes from entrepreneurs. We have invited people from the European Commission to talk about their new startup and scale-up strategy that was recently launched by the European Union, because we're still facing a big scale-up gap, as we say in Europe compared to the US. And I think probably that's also things that you discuss. We have a lot of startups, but not many of them scale successfully. We also had some academic speakers, and mainly we also talked about the importance of distinguishing growth, exponential growth, from scaling. Many people actually use these words interchangeably, but there is actually an important difference, because scaling is a bit more difficult than just growth or exponential growth. And scaling basically means that you grow faster in terms of revenues compared to costs. Basically, you're growing towards profitability, towards a profitable business model. And I think that was actually one of the highlights, to also discuss what that means for entrepreneurs to make that transition from a pure focus on growth to what we call profitable growth or scaling. And that also means that you need to transform the organization. So I must say that a lot has been about the organizing aspects of scaling, and not per se talking about a business model or maybe a digital business model, but basically what it means to organize the growth of a digital business model, for instance. What it means to hire many people, to onboard them successfully, and also to increase the productivity of your people within the organization. I think also the visitors we had from the European Commission, they also talked a lot about lack of access to finance and talent, but they also concluded in the end that basically it comes back to the leadership skills and capabilities of the management teams or the entrepreneurial teams that matter most, basically, in order to feed forward the organization and persist high growth over time.
Fantastic, Justin. No, thanks very much for providing that insight. And I think your point you're making specifically around how do you define growth versus scale, I know is one that we'll probably be debating this afternoon here in Calgary, because whilst the word scaling has come into popular use over the last 5-10 years, I think that the reality is that industry is running ahead of policy and research around this space. And so I know that's why your annual conference with the European Scaleup Institute is so important, because we need to be bringing these insights through to best define things like the difference between scaling and high growth. And therefore, with scaling, how do you decouple the growth of revenue from your employee and your cost base? And that can actually truly achieve scale, whereas that can be challenging for service-based businesses in particular, given often the lack of technology. So technology is obviously a key enabler and driver of those things. But I'm wondering whether you can share, what other sort of takeaways do you have from today? Like, given everything you've discussed, aside to the definitional aspect, and give us maybe an insight as well to what's happening over the next couple of days for you in Europe.
Yeah, so I think related to that, that's also research insights, but also triggers us, let's say, as scholars and academics, to provide answers to entrepreneurs. But that's the idea of the episodic nature of high growth. And so we also see quite a few scale-ups or scaling firms in the Netherlands, and that's for sure also the case in Canada. But they only grow fast for a couple of years. And what we see here in Europe is basically that many of these firms, 2/3, so that's a lot, they actually fall back after a period of high growth. What it means is that somehow they have found a viable business model, which also brings in new customers, revenues, but they're not able to persist that steep growth path for a longer period of time. I think that is also an important topic that we need to address, and we need to find out how entrepreneurs, may on the one hand focus on growth, but on the other hand may also focus on transforming, reorganizing the organization in order to identify and seize new opportunities for growth in the future. And that is a real challenge, because that means that you need to be able to deal with paradoxes over time. And so you need to be able to accommodate forces within the organization that can be contradictory at times, and that makes it more difficult, I believe, for entrepreneurs to do both. So to do both growth and restructuring, for instance, within the organization. But it is a key paradox to be managed. So maybe also to the entrepreneurs in the room, I think, the capability or the skills or the discussions you may have in your teams about whether to focus on additional growth or maybe reducing costs, you should also or remind that you need to do both at the same time. So you need to have people in your team that are good at maybe identifying and seizing novel opportunities, but at the same time you also need to have people in your team that are able to improve the organization, increase the efficiency, and work on the operations of the organization. And you, as a CEO founder, you have to bring that together in some kind of a shared vision, and you need to explain to the organization, and that's an important role of senior leaders, and you have to do that repeatedly. You have to explain why both forces are important for the success of the organization over time. And so that you should not, let's say, make a decision, let's focus on one or the other, but try to do both. In reality, of course, that can be quite dynamic. So it could be the case that maybe for a year or two, you're going to focus much more on growth, but you should be able to also bring down costs at some point, because otherwise you will not be able to survive. I think we actually talked a lot about these paradoxes that need to be dealt with by entrepreneurs here today. And we're also going to do that probably tomorrow. And also what it means to different domains of the organization. If you talk about talent, if you talk about access to finance, if you talk about operations, in any of these domains, you have to deal with paradoxical forces. And that comes back again to developing the required leadership skills and capabilities in your team. Not those that you may need today, but you need to foresee a little bit like, okay, what will be the challenges that we're going to face maybe next year or in 20 or in the year thereafter. So you can already invest in developing the skills that you need to have upfront, let's say, before you actually face the real challenges. So you need to become a little bit more forward-looking as a leadership team.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, no, points really well made, and we're taking note of those in the room here. I think one of the things that really struck me about what you've just said is this notion of growth being episodic. I know globally studies show generally that companies only manage to sustain growth for a period of between 3 and 6 years, and then there's often a consolidation period. But for many firms after that consolidation period, they don't grow again. And so I know statistically about only 15%, 1 in 7 of companies then achieve a second growth episode. And then basically the statistic keeps decreasing from there. So this isn't just about sustaining growth. This is also about catalyzing new episodes of growth. And they're both slightly different things, whereas catalytic processes are probably more innovative, more creative, looking at future opportunities, whereas the sustaining growth, there's other efficiency, productivity aspects there as well. And so your mention of paradox, I think, is a big one, because how you be a creative, forward-looking organization while also effectively managing the efficiency and productivity of the organization is not always that easy to manage that duality as a leader of an organization. And we've seen that time and again through our studies here as well. So thank you for sharing that and bringing that to our attention. Do you have anything else to share before? I'd like you just to, I guess, introduce your new report that's been published from Europe. So if people in the room here go to the European Scaleup Institute, you'll get to download their new annual report, which is called The Return of Growth Momentum. And that report provides insights to scaling up from Europe and what European scale-ups are experiencing.
Yeah. No, we do see indeed the surge or momentum in the number of high growth firms across Europe. Interestingly, there are some differences across the different countries. Germany is lagging a little bit behind. We see more scale-ups these days across Nordic countries. So as well as in the southern parts of Europe. So that was actually quite interesting to see that they are actually catching up compared to countries like Germany, the Netherlands. We also have some data from the UK. And so we see some divide now in Europe, that especially the Nordic countries as well as southern European countries are catching up. On top of that, I believe that, you know, this is not a game to be played only in one country or one continent, because I truly believe that the best practices that we have here can be applied in Canada as well as the other way around. And so I'm also a big supporter of collaborations between the different continents, because what I also see is a force and the necessity of many of our scale-up entrepreneurs to go abroad. So actually to expand their markets beyond the boundaries of the European Union. And I truly believe that this is, let's say, some kind of a co-creation between the different continents. Even though we face some difficult times, of course, these days, we should definitely, you know, use the ties that we have to share best practices and to make sure that our scale-ups will actually thrive and potentially turn into unicorns, for instance.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, thank you very much for tuning in today.
Yes.
And wishing you all the best for the next couple of days for your conference. I wonder if you could just give us an insight to what's coming up for you on your end before we close out.
Well, I'm actually going to enjoy the sun now. So it's a brilliant weather, especially for the Netherlands. So we have a nice sunshine. So we have another keynote during dinner of the CEO of Polar Steps. She will actually talk a lot about scaling internationally as an organization and what it means to also develop the organizational capabilities needed. So I'm really looking forward to her talk. And then again, we're going to start early morning again tomorrow with a couple of sessions. And we have a panel of deep tech scale-up. So that's a different kind of game, let's say, if you want to scale up a deep tech company compared to other types of companies. I'm also really looking forward what it means to scale up deep tech across time.
Fantastic. Well, go and enjoy the weather. Raise a glass
Yes.
for your absent friends here in Calgary and across Western Canada. And thanks a lot, Justin, for tuning in and sharing some of those insights, which I know that we'll take into the rest of our program today. So appreciation from the audience here today towards you. And obviously, please say hello to Leonardo and Vronerique and obviously the rest of the crew.
I will do. Enjoy the day as well in Canada.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.